Hey, kia ora koutou whānau. Welcome back to another edition of the Big Hairy News. How are you? Well, before you turn off, Chewy's on his way. Chewy's got a work thing on this evening. He'll be here as soon as he can. So don't panic, baby birds. We'll feed you still. Chewy's coming. He'll be here. I know you just tuned in to see him, but he will be here at some stage. Don't panic. We have a guest to start off with anyway. Marcail Parkinson is going to be joining us from the VUWSA, Victoria University Students Association. She's the Pres, and we're going to talk a little bit about an issue that came up yesterday in a certain right-wing ecosphere, a right-wing media echo chamber. It was a very, very, very big news story. And we'll talk more about that in a sec. Before we do that, though, I just want to remind you guys that this is our merch week. We are on for merch this week, bhnshop.nz. A few more hoodies got purchased in the last sort of 24 hours, just so you know what's going on. We have our BHN gear, we have our BHN personalised gear. Remember, if you want a personalised hoodie with your name on it, make sure you pick the personalised hoodie brand, because it does cost us a little bit more to get the things printed on the back. Same for t-shirts, personalised t-shirts or t-shirts. And our buffer gear this month is in part supporting medical aid for Palestinians, maps.org.uk. For every hoodie or t-shirt we sell of the Buffer brand, 25% of the profits will go to medical aid for Palestinians, which we will get off to them. These are going to be available until Thursday, end of the show Thursday. And remember, with the Buffer gear, we do a new branded version every month. And this is the only month you will see a black Buffer hoodie and a grey Buffer hoodie with this logo on it. Or same for the t-shirts. So if you're keen for those ones, then head to bhnshop.nz. I also want to say big thanks to our patrons. Had another few people sign up today. You know, we're on a drive, 50 new patrons. We're at about 45 that we've got in the last 8 days. So if you're keen to support the work we do, I'm not going to put the billboard up tonight because I haven't remade it yet. If you want to support the work we do, head to patreon.com/Big Hairy News. The 50 number, like we're trying to get 50 new patrons, it's an arbitrary number. But that's the number we threw out there. And we're at about 46 after a week. So that's pretty cool. Thanks, team, for coming on board. Thanks for being a part of what we do. And if you signed up in the last 24 hours, thank you. There are a few there in the inbox. Right. So last night we had a bit of a chat about our mate, Oliver Plunket, and his interview with the president of the Victorian University of Wellington Students Association, VUWSA. Marcail Parkinson, and we thought, rather than bombastically shouting down Marcail and giving her 8 seconds at a time to answer a half question and then spinning it at the end to pretend you'd asked a completely different question, maybe we'd just get Marcail on and shut up for a while and find out what this is all about. So let's welcome to the show, Marcail Parkinson. Kia ora.
Thanks for having me.
That's absolutely my pleasure. Did I synopsize your interactions with Oliver fairly well there?
Yeah, I think so. It was, I mean, I knew it wasn't going to be an easy interview going in. I, didn't go in expecting to be welcomed with open arms, but I was surprised at how little I got to speak.
Yeah. Oh, well, look, just speaking of that, I've got some stuff I want to ask you about that, but I saw that I think it was the sub-editor for The Salient went on the platform as well. Yeah. We're always interested as to why people choose to go on, even forget that particular platform, when they know they're not going to get a fair shake and they're going to get shouted down. What was your rationale behind going on and even talking to them?
Yeah, so I had quite a few conversations when they reached out to me because I wasn't 100% sure if I wanted to go on. Yep. And Henry, who works at Salient, I work quite closely with, and he let me know that he'd also been asked to go on, and we had a couple phone calls. And I had some calls with my family and also the Vice-Chancellor talking about whether it makes sense to engage in a conversation when you know you're not going to be given a fair go. And I watched a bunch of Plunket's videos to kind of prep myself and thought that he had gotten better recently, actually, at interviewing people and had given people more space to speak, having watched his videos with Chris Hipkins, where he did actually let Chris give some of his opinion. And Henry and I have both had quite a lot of hate on Twitter and other social media recently about being snowflakes who can't handle a debate and can't cope with other people's opinions. And so we kind of wanted to go on the platform to directly contradict that and say, actually, we're willing to be accountable for what we've said. We're going to go on a platform where we know that our views aren't going to be received with open arms, but we're willing to defend what we've said and also listen to what the other side has to say and engage in that conversation.
Well, the unfortunate thing you got wrong there is the listen to what the other side had to say, because you never get a chance to listen. I'll tell you what it is about Chris Hipkins, though. Plunket needs access to Hipkins. Like, it's good for his show to be able to get Hipkins on every couple of weeks. So he needs Hipkins more than Hipkins needs him. And I think that's probably what you heard when you thought he was getting better, so to speak. Let me synopsize your conversation, because I've written it down in steps as I heard it. So you go on. He says, "What's wrong? What's wrong with the Free Speech Union?" You say they support lots of questionable causes. My paraphrase. He says, like what? You say Julian Batchelor's anti-co-governance. He says, what's wrong with that? You say they made race-based decisions on who was allowed into the meetings. He says, no, they didn't. And in fact, he went so far as to say this.
The co-governance tour that actively turned away Māori from its...
When did it actively turn away Māoris?
There's many news articles, Sean. I'm sure you can look them up.
No, I've covered them extensively. There is lots of examples of them turning away people who were disrupting their meetings. Not one single example ever, Marcail, of them having a race barrier.
Oh, really?
Or
That's not the story.
Well, yeah, well, there's facts and there's the stories you hear, Marcail.
See, when someone puts out a metric like that, not one single example, that's a measurable fact, Marcail. And so very quickly, you then you told him of one single example, which he couldn't. I don't know if you noticed this when you watched it back. If you watched it back, he couldn't log into his computer. It was like watching an orangutan try and use an iPad. He couldn't figure it out. For, not to say that we're better than Sean Plunket, but when I googled the keywords, I got it straight away. The article you were talking about, right? Māori filmmaker refused entry to stop co-governance meeting in Blenheim. So you gave him the example, one single example, because he says there's not one single example. And then he said, but Julian Batchelor isn't speaking in the event at the university or part of the Free Speech Union, which is the bait and switch, because that's not what you were saying. You were saying the Free Speech Union is speaking, and you're concerned because they support causes like Julian Batchelor, not actually Julian Batchelor. So that was the bait and switch. Tell me, did I get that pretty much nailed down? Do you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, I think the only thing I'd add there is that I had a conversation with the producer beforehand where they wanted me to come on and speak directly with Jonathan Ayling, and I'd said, no, I actually don't want to talk about Jonathan Ayling because I don't want to center the conversation around him. This conversation is about free speech and the meaning of free speech. It's not about an individual. And so I was quite disappointed that, hopefully the producer had told Sean that, and Sean then decided to make the entire interview about Jonathan Ayling and the Free Speech Union when I'd explicitly asked him not to.
Well, of course. I mean, that's better clickbait for him, isn't it? I mean, on reflection now, your voice was heard in small incremental bits between blowhardery. Do you think it was worth going on? Would you do it again?
I think it was worth going on. I had students contact me after I went on saying that they'd seen it and it made them really proud that I was the president and that they really appreciated that I was willing to go on platforms that aren't mainstream media platforms to discuss my views, and platforms that don't agree with me. So I think it was worth it, but I don't know that I would go on again.
I agree. I think you did really well. But when I emailed you yesterday, I think that was the first thing I said in the email. I think you did really well because, I mean, I'm watching the series Fallout at the moment on Prime Video, and there's a thing called a gulper. and the gulper is like this big whale that swims under the water and comes up with a massive mouth and gulps, and it's got fingers inside its mouth to pull the things in. And when I saw that, I went, oh, that's kind of like a Sean Plunket interview. It just gulps everything, all this oxygen in the room. And so, yeah, I think he did really well as well. Let's actually have a look at what the subject matter was about. Yeah. The subject matter, and I've got an RNZ article up here for people to check out. The subject matter was about free speech versus hate speech. Victoria University postpones debate after student backlash. I won't go through the whole thing, but maybe the first couple of paragraphs. Victoria University has postponed a planned debate on freedom of speech after concerns the event would become a platform for hate speech. Last week, student magazine Salient criticised the lack of diversity of the 5 confirmed panellists, singling out the inclusion of the Free Speech Union's Jonathan Ayling as a consistent supporter of harmful rhetoric. Now, there's a very good line in this, because I read this a couple of paragraphs last night, where one of you said, there it is, probably this one here, the Free Speech Union are looking to defend the issues, the speech, sorry, that the Free Speech Union are looking to defend is consistently speech, this is a great definition, that fits under the United Nations definition of hate speech, and that is the concern we have with the university. Why is it that you feel hate speech is a legitimate discourse that shouldn't be suppressed? Now, just so you know, Marcail, last night we did a bit of a chat about this, and I said, in general, I'm someone who leans towards more speech is better. But I'm all someone who knows there's no such thing as a free speech absolutist. And all we got to do is think about putting a threat towards a politician or stuff, or yelling fire in a theatre. And also on top of all of that, acknowledging that I'm not part of one of these vulnerable groups that may or may not be impacted by certain speech. So I'm always wanting to listen and see what others have got to say, while still in general leaning towards more speech rather than less speech. So tell us about the university situation, what you guys were trying to tell them, and the outcome from it, because I believe there may have been a little bit of exaggeration in some of the articles that we've read. So why don't you tell us your part of it, tell us what was happening, and tell us why you took that position.
Yeah, so the idea behind the free speech debate originally came from an op-ed that the Vice-Chancellor Nick Smith wrote for the Post, which you can look up if you just look up Nick Smith free speech. Which is really interesting, and it's him talking about how the ACT Party's new free speech bill will make speech in universities less free, because of the way that sometimes opening up the doors, kind of like you said, yelling fire in a theatre type of thing. So yeah, so there you go. The problem with the government's free speech law. So it came out of this, and I think one of the reasons why people like Ayling were invited is that they wrote responses to this article, which was interesting. But yeah, I totally back Nick in this article and the points that he's making here around how, sometimes people think that they're making speech more free, but actually it's restricting often minority groups from being able to put forward their views. And the issue that we kind of brought up when the university put forward the panel, first of all, there was an issue of diversity. Everyone on the panel was Pākehā. And we were really concerned about that because there had been talk about the panel discussing topics such as te tiriti. And most people who I have spoken to did not feel comfortable with te tiriti being discussed, especially anyone Māori who I spoke to, didn't feel comfortable that te tiriti was going to be discussed without a Māori person there to speak for it. Another issue is that and I've spoken to many Māori staff who had been asked to sit on the panel, and the reason that they had all given for not sitting on the panel was that they didn't feel it was a safe space for them.
Right.
And that was really concerning. These are our academics. These are people who are so well versed in what they do. They're the top of their field. And if they don't feel comfortable sitting on a stage because of the other people's views that are up there, that is preventing their free speech, right? Which is what the Free Speech Union seem to be all about. And then the other issue is what we've covered, which is that the Free Speech Union have consistently promoted and protected speech that promotes hate. So some more examples of that, as well as the Bachelor co-governance things. There was Posey Parker when she came to New Zealand. They have done some articles around things that could be more left-leaning, like the cancellation of Rainbow Story Times. But even then, they blame the council for cancelling the event because they say that everyone has the right to protest and the council is taking away people's right to protest those rainbow story times.
Look, the truth is the rainbow storytime ones, we covered that quite heavily. When actually Aileen was talking to Plunket, and Aileen wanted to make sure everybody knew he was a Christian, and as a good Christian man, he found the behaviour of the drag queens abhorrent. So like he that was literally, I mean, he wanted to use the word abhorrent, but disgusting. We played it on the show. So, you know, he says he's standing with, and look, we've been saying it for a long time. I firmly believe, it's my honest held belief, if they decide to get litigious, it's my honest held belief that they're a right-wing psyop who've thrown a few lefty kind of things every now and again to try and save face, to go, oh no, we talk about everything. Stefan Molyneux is one of the probably worst cases of who they've supported coming across here, which is just, you know, black and white. And even Graham Linehan, I think his name is, who I think on reflection, it's an interesting conversation because some of the things he was complaining about in the UK have now, the laws have switched in the UK. So there's an interesting debate to be had there, but it's certainly not coming from a place of sort of, let's have an authentic academic conversation. It feels like it's more coming from a place of, you know, I'm right, you're wrong, you know, let me punch down sort of thing.
Yeah. The other thing that I found really interesting about the debate is that a lot of people have conflated free speech with academic freedom. They're not quite the same thing. They're similar, and I can see where it comes from, but they're not quite the same thing. And under academic freedom, with the law that is set out by the Ministry of Education for what academic freedom means, it says that universities have an ethical need to protect the right to speak and challenge ideas that are based in evidence, research, and scholarship.
Right.
And we didn't feel that the debate format was going to promote things that were based in evidence, research, and scholarship. We didn't believe that there was enough moderation at the event to ensure that things were based in evidence. And so that's what we've asked the university. And I mean, to their credit, the university have postponed the event so that they can look at reformatting it to include more voices, have more diversity, make sure that it can be moderated correctly so that what is being discussed can be based in evidence, research, and scholarship. And one of the things I found most frustrating is that people like Plunket and Jonathan Aileen seem to believe that the university is caved to the woke crowd because they're afraid of being cancelled, and they want to, the students want to cancel free speech, and the university is afraid of being cancelled, and so they've caved. What's actually happened is, as students, we have used our right to free speech to say, hey, look, we have some concerns about how this event has been organised. The university's gone and said, those are very valid concerns, and so therefore we are going to restructure the event to address that, which is absolutely the right thing to do. Like, I 100% back the uni in doing that, and massive props, because it's really difficult to say, actually, yeah, we've made a mistake and we're going to step back and try and fix it.
How would you respond to the kinds of people that use the term woke? Normally, like 15 years ago, I was working in Talkback, and the same people today who are saying woke back then were saying PC. Everything's PC. Now everything's woke. It's the same kind of, and normally what I find is most people who use those terms don't actually understand what they mean. In fact, Plunket himself, I've podcasted with Plunket once before. When I asked him what woke means, he agreed it was anything that didn't agree with him that was considered woke. But if you were speaking to one of these people who did have that sort of position that everything was woke, and who say things like, oh, university is a place you're supposed to go to have your thoughts challenged and have these debates, how would you respond to that?
I mean, for starters, I agree. The university is a place that you go to have your ideas challenged and to expand your worldview. Like, that is 100% university somewhere where, everyone should be able to express their views, but as long as their views are based in evidence, research, and scholarship. It's not a place to come and just spout whatever random nonsense you've dreamed up. Sean Plunket did say to me yesterday that he believed I was living in, I think he called me the mayor of Wokesville or something, and he said he was living in the real world. I wasn't quite sure how to respond to that when he said it, because I'm not sure who gets to decide what's the real world and what's not.
He does. Hang on, were you not aware of that, Marcail? It's everything. Like, anytime Wellington City Council spends money, Sean Plunket he said on the show before, I did not approve of this. He has to go through him. Yeah. So you weren't aware of this. I guess
he's the mayor of the real world.
Yeah. So just given us a new name for him. We've now got a third name for him, the mayor of the real world. We might get those T-shirts made.
Yeah. So I mean, I think that a lot of people who use the term woke to encapsulate things, it's a really weak argument. It doesn't actually say anything. It's just a term that's thrown around to try and shut people down and try and discredit, especially young people.
Yeah.
And it's really important to recognize that as like a power imbalance, which is something else that, was an issue with the debate, was that we didn't believe that it recognized the power imbalances of those who were going to be talking, or of the students as audience members versus the people on the panel. I think that's a really important thing to consider.
I think when you put the condition, and I'm reading it, I've jotted it down, the condition that the university has about, making sure everything comes as evidence, research and scholarship, it kind of ends this debate, doesn't it? The debate isn't that we're having about the debate. The debate about the debate seems to be ended because, that doesn't mean you just get someone up there like what we do in the show, just spouting opinions, because that needs to be based on evidence, research and scholarship. The other thing about free speech, I don't know if it's quite the same in New Zealand, but certainly, America seems to be the hub of free speech. It's normally based in and around government agencies. Like, if I just kick you off this platform right now, Marcail, and you go, oh, you wouldn't let my free speech. No, that's because you're not entitled to be on this. It's not a free speech issue. It's more about a government entity hindering your speech. And all these guys who, like Jonathan Ailing's a perfect example, were bitching and whining about, my free speech and this and that. And then he goes on to a platform and speaks to more people on a platform about what a victim he is losing his chance for free speech, while he's literally speaking to people on a bigger platform. I think people think that they talk about free speech, but what they're really wanting is the privilege to do what they want, when they want, and say it how they want. Chewy often talks about, being able to say the N-word. People just want free speech so they can say the N-word, or something ridiculously as abhorrent as that sort of thing.
Yeah, yep, I totally agree. I think there is also a big difference between, the freedom to speak and giving someone a platform to speak. Anyone's able to go onto the internet and keyboard warrior and type out all of their thoughts and feelings. Yeah. But that doesn't mean that I, as the VUWSA President, need to repost that.
Yeah, 100%.
Platforming people's views is completely different to freedom of speech, and they're issues that get conflated a lot. This was an issue where we were concerned that the university was platforming views that we did not think were appropriate to be platformed due to the ethical responsibilities of the university. And that's been turned into you're taking away my freedom to speak. Yeah.
No, fascinating. Hey, look, I want to ask you about one more thing. We've already talking about this because you sent me a text while we were talking today, and I'll read the part of the text out that we're going to talk about. You say this: interesting conversation where David Seymour blamed me for, quote, making defamatory, untrue and misleading comments, end quote, about the fact that the New Zealand Initiative and Free Speech Union are both funded through the same streams, Atlas Network. So David Seymour, you ran into David Seymour and he accused you of making defamatory and untrue, misleading statements. So I'd love to hear that story.
Yeah. So I was at Parliament today for a rally for the Mental Health Matters Initiative, which is a really cool initiative around supporting youth mental health. And the reason we were there today was specifically around the defunding of the Suicide Prevention Office, which is a really important issue, but different topic. And I saw David Seymour walking past, just coming back from his lunch break, I guess. He had some Subway. And so I decided I'd run over to him and say, hey, because I've met David before. He was my local MP when I was in high school. And I met with him multiple times and had some really interesting conversations around the climate and that sort of thing. But I ran up to him and I said, hey, David, I just wanted to know, are you free sometime? I tried to ask you on Twitter, but are you free sometime to sit down and have a chat about free speech and what the difference is between free speech and hate speech and why you've been making these comments about me online? And he said, oh, why should I talk to you about free speech? And I said, oh, because I'm the president of VUWSA. And he went, oh. He then, basically went on to tell me that he didn't want to sit down and have a conversation with me because he didn't believe that my comments that I'd made online were appropriate, and specifically pulled out, I think I made quite a throwaway comment when I was on News Talk ZB, where I said, and if you look at the New Zealand Initiative and the Free Speech Union, they're all funded through the same streams. And he kind of went on a bit of a rant at me for about a minute about how that's an untrue statement to make and it's defamatory. And he was like, I want to talk to you about the defamatory statements that you've been making around the funding of the Free Speech Union and the New Zealand Initiative. They're not he just kind of went on a bit of a rage at me, which was not the greatest experience, but at least I talked to him.
Well, as a former graduate of the Atlas Network, it's interesting that he's so sure he knows where Atlas is spending their money. So if he knows it's not going there, then that implies he knows it's probably going to other places. Interesting that a graduate would know that, perhaps, Marcail.
Yeah, I don't know. I found it quite a weird thing for him to have latched onto because it was such a throwaway comment. And I didn't specifically mention the Atlas Network when I said it because I don't know a ton about them. Most of what I know has just been through when he did post about me on Twitter. There were a bunch of people in the replies saying, oh, of course you're defending these people because they're from the Atlas Network. And I was like, oh, and I did some research into it. But yeah, I thought it was a really weird thing for him to latch onto and to have a go at me about, and to say it was defamatory when I believe that there is evidence out there that the Free Speech Union and the New Zealand Initiative have both received funding from the Atlas Network previously. Yeah.
And the interesting question, why he went off at that, I mean, defensive much, methinks the lady doth protesteth too much, perhaps. I mean, if you're going to go off on that one thing, I wonder why that's the trigger point, Marcail. Just speculating out here, of course.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, I talked to some people I know and they, I'm friends with some of Salient and things, and they all said that they've seen a lot of him recently getting quite upset about any mention of the Atlas Network. So he just seems to be quite touchy about the subject at the moment.
Right. Hey, we said last night as a bit of a throwaway joke that we felt old when you told us your mum watched the show. That was a reference to us if your mum's watching. It was a reference to how old we are, not how old your mum is. Do you want to shout out to your mum in case she's watching?
Hi, Mum. How are you doing? I think my siblings are watching as well. They were messaging in the family group chat, everyone watch BHN to see Marcail.
So you an Epsom girl? Is that the neighbourhood you're in?
Yeah. I went to Epsom Girls for high school. And I ran the School Strikes for Climate in Auckland, which was why I met with David quite a few times.
Nice. All right. Yeah. Very cool. Hey, I guess the last thing, just on a personal level, are you going to be one of these horrible wokesters who never has a real job and goes straight from the president into parliament, then into government? What's your plan for the future?
I don't want to go straight into parliament. I'm not going to completely write it off as an option because there might be a point in the future when I do decide to. But I think I've had enough in the public light in the past few years. It's taken quite a toll. There's a lot of really, really ugly stuff that goes on in the media, especially as a woman. I get quite a lot of hate on social media and on Twitter and those sort of places. And yeah, it's taken a bit of a toll on me emotionally. So I'm going to go and do some work that I find a bit more fulfilling than doing this kind of media. So I'm looking at working with either refugees or homeless people are kind of my two passions. So yeah, I'm studying a Bachelor of Arts in International Relations and Art History. So hopefully I can use that. And yeah.
Can you see your screen right now? Is this
yeah, that's my mum.
Hi, Mum. Nice to be. Everyone's saying hi to your mum now. Look, see. Hi, Mum.
It's so cute.
Hi, Mum. And of course, everyone's also saying thanks, Marcail. Great chat. Family should be very proud. I agree with that as well. So thanks for coming on. You've got a little community here who are sending their love. So thank you for joining us tonight. Really appreciate you trusting another internet news media site that don't shout that much. We tend to shout when we're shouting at people like Sean Plunket, but not to our guests. So that's nice. Thanks so much for joining us tonight, mate. You're a legend. Really appreciate you having on. And I'll send you some videos about the Atlas Network. We've had a few interesting conversations here about it.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
All right, dude. All the best. Thank you for that. All right, there you go. I've seen the young Chewmeister as well there in the chat. Chew, if you're in the chat, you can jump on now. If you feel like jumping on, we can. Oh, there we go. Did you hear the pop, people? We heard the pop. I heard the pop. It'll be here any second now. Let us. Hello, sir. Saw you in the chat there. You're just waiting your turn, were you? You're getting in the queue.
I didn't want to burst in and interrupt. I'm
Before
very
we
polite
start,
like that.
Before we start chatting, these all came in during the thing. Super chat. Thank you, Nick. Damn, just a smidge late. Thank you. $2 super chat. Mr. Alex also says, now look, I have to probably put an apology out there. We have got I've had a couple of conversations with people that I haven't got back to. And I really do apologize. But we are just a sort of 1.1 man show here. And sometimes there gets to be a lot of work. Mr. Alex has been talking to us about this for a few weeks, and I apologise we haven't come back to you. There's another one as well about a disability sector one, which I haven't come back to. So look, my mea culpa right now is I apologise. I promise I will try. There's only enough hours in a day. I promise I will try to get back to you guys. Alex says, just want to let your viewers know, Harm Reduction Coalition Aotearoa will be launching next Thursday. The fight to end prohibition in New Zealand is not over, despite results in the 2020 cannabis referendum. Not giving up. Thank you very much for that, sir. Appreciate the super chat. Another one here from Lurchify. A message to Marcail, and I guess Marcail's mum, Erin, might still be watching, so you can pass this on. Thank you so much for what you do. I'm nearly 60, and frankly, I'm embarrassed that in my younger days of activism pales in comparison to today's young committing to humanity and the planet, from Lurchify. Thank you, sir. Appreciate the super chat as well. A couple of other ones in there as well. Peter says, wishing all a happy May Day tomorrow. May the 1st. Dude, it's May the 1st. You know what happens after May? After May, it's halfway through the year. It's June. Holy crap buckets. And Gold wants to give a new idea. Never heard this before. I heard on the internet that David Seymour is the worst example of a human being out there. That's an interesting thought. I hadn't heard that anywhere before.
I found the comments really interesting that he is so sensitive to mention of the Atlas Network.
Yeah. There's something there, eh? It's absolutely
really does feel that way.
Let me also just say publicly, and this is for you as well, Chewy, that the auto highlighting of the super chats is still not doing it, and how it stars them. So just keep an eye on them and just manually star them so we don't miss. Like there's one there already. We'll do it right now. Worming. Well, that might be a new one. Have you heard from Worming before? Anyway,
no,
welcome,
it is
Worming.
a new name.
I asked some people around, and the vibe I got is David Seymour is the worst person around. I love it when I don't pre-read them,
look,
and I get to enjoy them with everybody else.
If there's one thing that we've learnt this year, right, is that vibes are just as good, if not better, than empirical evidence. So lock it in.
And I have a chat for you. It's not a super chat, but I saw this before the show started, and I laughed, and I thought you'd like it. Are you ready?
Oh, braced.
Luxon looks like White Grimace. So now someone has to Photoshop.
Oh, snap.
Yeah, come on, you designers out there. Photoshop
That
for
is
us,
so
please.
good.
Big Hairy News, and we'll put the tag on it and put it out there. BigHairyNews@gmail.com. Who's going to be the first to Photoshop Luxon looking like White Grimace? It's very funny. It's very good, Daryl. It's very good. Very funny. I saw that and I highlighted it. I knew you'd want to see that, Chewy. I just felt the need. So, hey, sir, this is like the start of the show. Is there anything you want to kick off with? Anything you want to say? Bring the whānau up on?
I'm fucking tired.
Yeah,
I've been at work since 9 o'clock, so 8:30 actually. So yeah, I'm a tired wee Wookie. But yeah,
Yes, Ma.
yeah. Look, we won't do a deep dive in this, but just before I got home, I'm going to mention this because it's going to happen once in a blue moon. I believe that Simeon Brown has announced something that I kind of agree with.
Something to do with potholes?
No, something to do with EVs.
Oh.
Rolling out of a more substantial EV charging network throughout the country. And he's noticed that the South Island is actually a place that exists. But rather than chargers that charge one or two vehicles, they're talking about spots that are capable of charging up to 10 vehicles at once. And they're in places like Armaroo and Belclutha and Cromwell and that sort of thing. So I'm going to dig into it because, like anything that comes out of the national government, I feel like there's fishhooks all the way through it.
Yep.
But my initial pass is like, oh, okay, this sounds like a good thing.
Speaking of good things, I was watching a bit of Working Group tonight, and I heard Damien Grant. So I guess your mea culpa, my one, is that say something that I agree with, talking about how Luxon's not in charge, and the other two are dog walking him around. So I'll get that, and I see that that Tower with One is back on again now, and they look to be doing something on Gaza tonight. So we'll have a look at that as well. That'll be stuff that'll probably be coming up tomorrow. Right. So tonight, pardon me, we are going to have a look at it's going to be a bit of a continuation on I've heard that. It's going to be a continuation on a little bit from last night about the polls. We had a look at Mr. Luxon on breakfast this morning, and then there was some more research that came out this evening from the poll, more scientific polling, about who the country thought was running the government. And it was a fairly close call to half the country saying it's not Luxon. And then some other bits and bobs as well. Of course, the parliamentarians, the MPs, are getting a pay rise. Whilst they're firing people aren't very happy about that. And that terrible government that we've just had, that terrible 6 years of Labor, they managed to freeze their pay because it wasn't appropriate that it was going up. But this government, they're not going to do that because I think they feel that they're entitled to a pay increase, Chewy. They're entitled to that. Did you also hear we've got a new name for Karen as well? It's the mayor of the real world.
I have.
Mayor of the real world.
Catch that.
Like
I'm a little torn. I'm a little torn on the pay rise thing because it has been a long time. Like there is an argument because there has been several freezes, and Luxon has. This is something that I've criticised him on before: is the absolute lack of political nous. I guess he has come out straight away and said he neither needs nor has asked for this. So he is donating it to charity. I will say the same thing I said when other former national leaders said a similar thing. I would like to see the receipts. Well, there was always comments about wages being donated to charity, and we never saw that was.
But even that, you say you're torn about it. I get what you're saying. I think the reality of it is, in this current climate, where they're firing and letting go a whole bunch of public servants, that's actually what it's about. It's not necessarily about the pay increases or anything, because, fair enough that workers get pay increases and MPs are workers, but while the MPs are actively cutting other people's pay and other people's salaries to zero in some instances, or cutting bonuses, for example, for Te Reo speakers, and at that instance, then taking a pay rise, that's what it's about to me. That's what it's about.
Hence me being torn on it. Like the remuneration authority, it's really important that they're independent. It's really important that the government can't force them to do something.
Yeah.
It's also a big pile of political capital for them to turn around, as has been used in the past, and go, we don't need it. The timing's wrong. It looks bad politically. So we refuse.
Yeah, and I mean, like I
don't think there's any problem with the politicians declining it. Yeah. It becomes a problem when the remuneration authority, like if it's reversed, like government says we need a pay rise, and then that's,
of course, and the dick move that Luxon did was he was saying, I'm not going to get near it. I'm not going to touch it. It's not my place to say. Straight after a leader who felt it was her place to say, we don't need a pay increase, so we're not taking one. So in other words, he's just had an example from the leader who apparently led the worst government there's ever been in the history of governments in New Zealand for the last million years, actively go, no, we're not doing this for pay increase. We don't need it. And then you've got the next guy coming along who's already been caught up taking, his entitlements, $1,000 a week for his house, then again saying, oh, no. He didn't say we're entitled to this after that, but it's putting out those same vibes. Look, let's just keep rolling into this conversation, because this part does include the pay rises as well. The first thing I wanted to show you was we often criticize, maybe that's true, Mr. Luxon on his bullshit CEO sort of vibe and candor. He's being asked by Anna Burns-Francis about the poll, and I just wanted to play you the first it's only 18 seconds of what he says to her after hello. And now just think of this, right? Your company is doing poorly, but the CEO needs to stand up and say something to the workers to keep them on side and tell them nothing to see here. He or she would probably say something like this.
But Hey, well, listen, what I'd say is, look, we acknowledge it's a tough time for Kiwis out there. Inflation's high, interest rates are high, and we're a government that's not shying away from tough decisions. That's what's needed to fix the mess that we've inherited. As I keep saying, we're going to rebuild the economy, restore law and order, deliver better public services. That's what we're laser focused on.
There you go. So there's your CEO message, Chewy. Yep. He's now got the troops back on side, and he wants to make sure everything's okay. And so Anna Burns-Francis and Mr. Luxon start talking about the poll last night and how much does the behaviour of Peters and Seymour affect this polling. And what I found fascinating about this, and I know we've said this before, but it's important to keep reiterating this, is he is still in pre-election bumper sticker mode.
Yes.
Just have a listen to the things that he says here that would fit on a bumper sticker, that have no substance at all, that could never delve into one layer down. Let's go into that. Let's go one layer deeper. Let's go. They're all just bumper stickers. So talking about the issue with the issue with the three-headed taniwha and how that's affected the polls.
Well, I think we're doing really well. I think 150 days in, we've put together the first three-party coalition in an MMP environment in New Zealand. We're very, very focused on our agenda, as you've seen with our 100-day plan, our quarterly action plan, and we're a government that wants to get things done. New Zealanders want a government to deliver, and they're tired, and they're doing it tough, and they want us to sort things out and fix the mess, so that's what we're going to do.
Is it a bit of a distraction, though, that it seems to be every couple of days there's some nitpicking from one leader to another leader, or who's doing what or who's responsible for what?
Look, we are very focused. We work in a very collegial way. We have a good team environment happening with our ministerial team. Everyone's really clear about what they've got to do. They're making tough decisions. I think we're working our way through the challenges that we've inherited. We've got a lot more to do, no doubt about it, but we're very focused on that.
David Seymour said last night, we're dangerously united from the point of view of our opponents. What about from your point of view?
It's not sexual, is it? What Seymour's saying. It's not being sexual, eh? I'm just checking. No? No.
God, I hope not.
No, we won't go there.
Well, we're very, I mean, I think as a government, we're just focused on getting things done. That's what New Zealanders expect us to do. You know, that's
getting things done. That's what New Zealanders expect us to do. I'm never going to go below the surface level bullshit which fits on a bumper sticker.
Why I came to politics. I think this country has tremendous potential.
Tremendous potential.
We're here to try and make sure that comes to life.
We're here to bring it to the top.
New Zealanders.
All New
and that's
Zealanders.
what we're doing, working hard to rebuild the economy, restore law and order.
Restore law and order.
It's as simple as that.
You know what I mean? It's just such horseshit, man.
Can I clarify,
it's just
are you
such
united
horseshit.
in your view?
Absolutely. We've been a very, very, very good government from the beginning. We have very good working relationships. Three different parties coming together in coalition government.
Coalition of chaos.
Express things differently, but I can tell you we are very, very focused on getting things done for the New Zealand people.
Yeah. So, they're talking about the polls there, and it was interesting when they talked about the polls there because later on in the conversation I'm going to show you, he says, no, didn't see the polls. No, didn't pay any attention to them whatsoever, which that's at the 6 p.m. news, which is sort of 12 hours after the part where they've just been talking about the polls. But
bullshit.
Yeah, your response to that, sir.
Yeah, so are we going to pretend that the leader of the country, the leader of the dominant party, shall we say, was not appraised of the latest poll results before he went on TV?
You know, I think he'll play
bullshit.
He'll play the card. No, I just didn't see One News. That's the card he'll try and play. But that's what. But even though he's been talking about it on One News that morning,
absolute nonsense. What a nonsense, man! White grimace. Like, if your best option to answer a question is to plead ignorance, like I'm not aware of what David Seymour said, or I'm not aware of what Winston Peters has said. I haven't seen the comments. Nobody showed me the polls. I don't know what people think of me. I don't know where I put my trousers. I just wear a bow tie. It's just like you want a leader that knows what's going on, and it just seems like he bounces from interview to interview with a clipboard that's just got mention law and order, mention laser focused on cost of living.
It's the bumper stickers.
Mention everyday New Zealanders are doing it hard. Just hit those points.
Yep.
Job done. You get a handshake and a warm cup of tea as soon as you're done.
Yep.
Not a hot cup of tea, a warm cup of tea.
I'm going to talk tonight about David Seymour wanting Labour to be banished and Luxon on the polls. In a lovely way, we get to talk about a third story, which is thanks anti-vaxxers, measles are on the back, coming on their way back, which we'll do after this, because this little story actually covers off all of those stories that we're going to figure out in one little story. Thank you, Simon Dallow. So let's have a look at the next part. This also talks about the polls again.
There's defiance and denial from the government after our latest One News variant poll.
From DePol. Sorry.
Revealed it currently doesn't have enough support to be in power if an election was held. While the results being dismissed by the coalition, critics say the poll shows a lack of empathy and vision from its leaders. And
how spot on is that? Lack of empathy and vision. Like I know you're reading an auto cue there, Simon, but let's just stop the bullshit about they wouldn't be in Parliament, because that's a parallel universe. But what it does suggest about empathy and vision, I'm with you, my silver fox brother.
And tonight we can reveal who Kiwis think is really pulling the strings around the cabinet table. Here's political editor Mikey Sherman.
Politicians rolling up to Parliament.
Just forgive me while I take my balaclava off so you don't mistake me for a bank robber.
Taking in the news of a grim poll result for the government.
Did you see the poll, One News poll last night?
I haven't seen a lot recently, very well.
Fair enough.
That is a golden line.
Absolute
Sir,
champion.
That is going, if we still had Eating Media Lunch, that would be the lead on Eating Media Lunch this week. Well played, sir. Well played. You get a pass. You can walk on.
I mean, it looks like it was straight from the honeymoon into the divorce period. I don't know. People are really frustrated.
I think that's an up and down of polls.
We've got to get our country back on track. I think the new government's had a shambolic start.
The ACT Party, wasting no time, issued a newsletter last night to supporters saying what's become clear today is that Labour, who should be banished, could be back.
Now, can we just say, now, I don't think they're they're probably not as sophisticated as the Trump sort of ecosystem, but how Trumpian does that sound?
It struck me as the Trump turn of phrase.
Yeah. It's like they should be banished.
That he has to how he says his thing, it's the first thing I thought when I read that.
Because what a ridiculous thing to say. What it is that Trump version of speaking to low IQ voters, the undereducated that Trump actively speaks about loving, like the people who are non-educated voters, because they are the ones who are going to be thinking, yeah, let's get rid of them. Like, you can do that. They should be banished. What are you talking about? It's utterly ridiculous. And maybe on some level a bit dangerous as well.
Be back.
Look, we said that actually it's important you recognise that if people want the kind of policies that ACT's putting forward, then you have to support us.
Winston Peters claims his support is solid.
Why don't you turn up at my meetings? They're wall to wall.
Because no one in the press gallery is old enough to turn up to your meetings, Winston. There's a minimum entry age of 82. You wouldn't let them in. You turn them away for being too young.
Packed out. Be a good experience for you.
Rubbishing the poll results.
Your polls are not worth the air or the words that they're
air. Did you get that? Who's losing his marbles? Your polls aren't worth the air they're written. Spoken to. My diaper.
Says he didn't tune in for the numbers.
I get in my news feed in lots of different ways. I just hadn't actually seen your report last
night. One former minister suggested that's a mistake.
Well, this is one poll, and one poll doesn't make an election outcome. On the other hand, they'd be foolish to ignore some of the warning signs in here about the loss of support and some of the anxiety that's coming through from the public.
In our latest One News variant poll, we also asked which of the parties...
Well, he's got a perspective, I guess, on being in coalition, and also, he's the worm, isn't he? They think he knows about populist kind of politics, Mr. Middleman. But what he says is right there, because he did basically say the result doesn't matter when it comes to the House, but they shouldn't ignore what it indicates, what the poll indicates, as opposed to what the actual numbers are. I think that's what we've been saying. Maybe he's been watching our show. Hi, Peter, if you're watching.
He's not wrong with what he said, but I can't take him seriously ever since those Facebook chain letters.
Yep.
There were people you had to post on your thing that you revoked rights for Facebook to use your personal information. Rowdy. Do you remember when they were real popular?
Yeah.
I remember him sharing that on his MP page.
Oh, right.
And I made a comment of like, this is legally nonsense. This is literally just a chain letter. And his reaction was to ban me from his Facebook page. So the man's a lawyer. He should know that. Or a lawmaker, I should say.
You get banned and blocked quite a lot. You must be a bad boy.
I am the worst person.
Let's have a look at this question now. Which of the party leaders do you think has the most influence on government decisions?
Leaders do you think has the most influence on government decisions? Half of respondents said the Prime Minister, but around a quarter thought Winston Peters, and 10% said David Seymour.
We've got to be fair. Winston has the biggest slice of the pie, and he is more than 50%. but for the Prime Minister not to be in the 80s or 90s. So that means 1 in 4 people think that Winston Peters has the most influence. 1 in 10 think that David Seymour has the most influence. And I guess that's almost 1 in 5 don't know you wouldn't trust to sit the right way on a toilet seat.
Rest didn't know or wouldn't say.
Of course, the Prime Minister is in charge. Depends which day of the week, and it depends on which issue.
The Prime Minister's always in charge.
You don't know who's in charge because Winston says whatever he likes, Seymour says whatever he likes.
And while completely coincidental, former National Prime Minister Sir John Key was at Parliament offering moral support.
You know, like when you've got the favourite teacher at school who's left and the new teacher comes in, everyone hates the new teacher. And then the favourite teacher comes back for a morning tea the following, and just the kids gravitate to the favourite teacher in front of the eyes of the teacher they all hate now. I'm just like, if I was Luxon, you'd be like, hey, JK, how about we just have a coffee out the back? You don't really need to parade yourself in your popularity polls in front of us today, do you? Please, maybe just not today, Sir John, please.
Look, I don't think there's any need for concern. I think they're working actually extremely well as a unified group as I thought they would.
A poll that's got everyone talking.
All right, Mikey, strong.
There you go. Everyone's talking, Chewy. Everyone's talking about the poll, which I guess is fair enough because they are. What do you reckon?
Yeah, look, everybody's talking about the poll. Everybody's.
I mean, we're not
talking.
Well,
same.
We wouldn't cover it for 2 nights in a row. We wouldn't do that.
Not even now.
No.
Every political commentator has commented on it with the same sort of obnoxious hyperbole that we were talking about from Mikey's coverage. Yes, it's just so overblown. It means fuck all. The trend matters, but
and
these individual polls, and as soon as you translate it to seats in the House, get fucked. It makes no difference. Everybody, like the reaction that's worthy of note is how the actual players are spinning it. As I said, Luxon saying that he didn't know is bullshit and should be acknowledged as such.
I mean, I agree with you, but I think he was kind of saying, I didn't watch the news last night, which doesn't mean he doesn't know exactly what the results were. But it's kind of stupid to play that game, especially after he was on the same station 12 hours earlier talking about the polls.
And then look, it just gave Winston another opportunity to take a swing at the media. So, that's the sort of thing of like the only time that Winston should be covered is when he's overseas and actually appears to be a functioning statesman rather than when he's at home being a domestic fuckwit.
Yeah. Yep. Let me show you.
Some people in the chat have been busy while we've been talking about this, by the way.
Oh, okay. But that's purple grimace. I need a cartoonist to make it properly. It's still pretty good though. Do you want to see the email that Seymour was quoted in? I'll show you the email.
Oh, yeah.
This is the email that went out today. Some governments get a honeymoon from the media. Others get an inflation hangover. Tonight's One Variant poll showed the details, yada, yada, yada. People are understandably upset about the cost of living, interest rates, and a soft economy. We don't just see that, we feel it. Here's the risk. If enough voters punish this government, desperate do you sound, punish this government, I can make it bigger, punish this government for the inflation and the debt of the last one. Well, hang on, you're punishing the last government from the debt of the previous national government, which put on twice as much as the previous national government put on 50 billion, the last government put on 25. So aren't you, sorry, I won't try and convince people of like the facts. Debt of the last one, New Zealand will get the bad medicine back, whatever that means. By the time people finally realize it doesn't work, it will be too late. It's interesting that, again, they're all saying these polls don't matter because it's 2.5 years away to the next election. Yet ACT is saying these polls really matter and it's only 2.5 years away to the next election. So this letter is actually identifying they could get back in. That implies we have to listen to this poll because there is another election on the way, whilst they're all saying in front of the camera, well, it doesn't really matter because there's not another election for 2.5 years. They say what becomes clear today is that Labour, who should be banished, could be back, and back with 2 very bad sidekicks. You mean like National? Every day in government, ACT is taking the necessary steps to clean up Labour's mess. and our team is working towards 2026 to make sure your voice and values are represented, but we can't do it without you. Cha-ching, money sound, please. We'll be coming after that because you can't do it without you and your wallets. I guess that makes sense to do some fundraising off it, but that was the actual email that went out that someone sent me today.
Yeah. Like, if they're starting to talk like that now, and I would expect that all three coalition partners will have learned the lesson from the last election and know that they need a war chest. And that's what they'll just be building on it. They'll just be building on a big pile of money that they got from last time.
Yeah. All right. Let's just have a look at some of these super chats and chats that have come in. Luchify, thank you for your super chat. Says the key take on the poll is not the drop. It's the drop in the first 6 months. Yeah, it's the drop for the first time like this since 1991. It's a drop in the first term of any MMP government there has ever been. So that was 1994, 1998, something like that. So this is the first time there's been this kind of drop in that first 6 months ever under MMP. JC for the super chat, $5, thank you. Says banishing a particular political party, so libertarian. It's a pretty good point there. I like that one. Peter for $5, thank you, sir. Says politician pay should be a fixed multiple of the minimum wage. Yeah, imagine how much the minimum wage would go up then, Chewy. That'd be quite a nice way of doing it. If they want a pay rise, they had to hire a higher minimum wage. I actually really like that idea, Peter. Maybe we start up a campaign for that one at the next election. And Mr. Arvid, thank you for the super chat. Says new nickname reminder: Karen Oliver Plunket, King of Realville. Also, David Seymour is the worst. Well, it's now Karen Oliver Plunket. It was mayor, wasn't it? The mayor of the real world. Yeah. So there you go. We should do something with that. I'm sure we can. Right. So, oh gosh, look at that. Here we go. There's another one here. Mr. Arvid, thank you again. David's brain is broken now. Chloe is officially more popular than him. Yeah, officially, it's there. Just checking all these. Yep.
Talking about MPs' pay and stuff like that. I remember seeing something. I don't remember the exact number, but it was reflected as a percentage of, or how close they were to a teacher's salary, like that sort of thing. And it was like, say, twice, and now it's 4 times as much. You know, that sort of thing. That increase on how much public servants were or MPs were getting paid compared to teachers.
Well, I can give you the numbers. A scale A teacher. A scale A teacher means you're at the end of the pay scale. A scale A classroom teacher. So that means you have they thing called management units. They give you units. Like if you're going to be the coach of the first team, they might give you a unit, which might be worth $4,000 a year or whatever. But if you don't have any units, no management, you're a classroom teacher, at the top of the pay scale is $90,000 at the moment. Backbenchers are $168,000. So unless they're going, I think a beginning teacher's on about 55. A beginning teacher, an early teacher would be the equivalent of a backbencher. Because obviously a prime minister's on 485,000 scale A teacher. So it depends where you put those. But you've brought it up. Segue. Let's actually have a look at the story around the pay and what they're doing with it. And again, let me make this really clear. I mean, I'm sort of with Chewy that it's not necessarily that MP shouldn't get an increase, the opposition shouldn't get an increase. It's that this government's taking an increase while they're taking bonuses off some people, for example, Te speakers, and while they're firing a whole bunch of public service. So it's the reality of them getting more while everyone else is getting less or nothing. That's what it's really all about. Let's have a look at the story.
That's right. Cha-ching. It's payday for MPs.
Is now the right time for politicians to get a pay rise?
Oh, look, as you well know, you don't want Prime Ministers or MPs setting their own pay. That's obviously up for an independent remuneration authority to make those decisions.
I don't want one.
You're kind of damned if you do and damned if you don't. It's just a process and law that we have to follow.
The Remuneration Authority has ruled that after 6 years of frozen pay packets, politicians have earned a pay rise. Stock standard backbenchers get the full 2.8%, bringing them up to $168,000.
So $100 a week, give or take.
Ministers too, they're bumped above $300K.
And $150 a week, more.
The PM gets an immediate $13,000 increase.
$250 more a week.
Taking him to $484,200.
That amount, no, that's way too much.
168,000. Wow, that's a lot.
The authority ruled that the role of Leader of the Opposition was no longer as valuable as a Cabinet Minister, saying MMPs caused the nature of this role to change and its salary relative to other party leaders is overstated. The authority thinks the gap should narrow, possibly significantly, meaning the opposition leader's pay bump was only $2,000, a quarter of the increase Cabinet Ministers get. But the big boss's pay packet will continue to rise every year, reaching more than $500,000 by the time the next election rolls around.
Everybody's being made redundant, so I don't think they need a pay rise.
You've got to fix the country up before you fix yourself up.
Oof. Not hard to read the public sentiment on that one. Terrible timing, given the Nats were just dealt a devastating poll blow that Luxon is not taking terribly well.
Yeah, but frothy and sensationalist, I think, were the words I used.
Last night's One News poll showed the opposition had the numbers to govern just 5 months into the coalition's reign, and Newshub understands Labour's internal poll numbers also show the left a nose in front of the right, with the major parties neck and neck, the red team on 33, the blue on 34.
Well, it's not positive at the moment because we're having to fake some pretty...
Someone's been a bit pissy.
Yeah, this sounds a little bit sort of woe is me, a little bit bitchy backroom. It's like, you know what I mean? It's like he's like a really, why, what do you expect? Like victim. This sounds very victim card.
Well, it's not positive at the moment because we're having to fake some pretty tough decisions.
I'll tell you what, Chewy, before it comes, I talk about reading the room, how you say he's not good at reading the room. He basically tries to sell that it's just as hard, National going through these hard times, as people losing their jobs. So he tries to sell that it's just as hard.
It's not easy when you've got people losing their jobs in the public service. It's not easy, right?
With economic times akin to 2008, Luxon's far from the soaring popularity of the John Key years.
Well, as I said, I think if you go back and have a look at times where the economy's been tough, often it does play out like that.
Possibly bad timing for Key to rock up to Parliament today as a reminder of the Nats' glory days as Luxon digs in and defends his ill-tasting medicine.
I know it's tough for those individuals, but it's not easy for a government to actually drive through that program as well. It's not easy to actually put sanctions on beneficiaries not holding their obligations on job seeker benefit. It's not easy.
It's not easy kicking people out onto the road who are beneficiaries. It's not easy. Guys, we got to, why doesn't anyone think of the white rich people? No one ever thinks of what they're going through when they're evicting poor brown people from Kāinga order houses. It's not easy, folks.
On beneficiaries not holding their obligations on job seeker benefit. It's not easy to evict unruly tenants out of KO. So I get all of that, right? But we have a hell of a mess to fix. We are going to turn the show around.
Turn it around by cutting jobs with one hand and taking pay rises with the other.
There you go. I mean, I do feel a bit for them. How hard is it for these poor politicians having hundreds of thousands of dollars of salaries, huge amounts of also, like cars and travel and that all paid for as well. Perks when it comes to paying for their houses and their rentals and that kind of stuff. Why don't we ever think of them? I know that it's hard for like a solo mum in South Auckland, having to keep her house up to the standard that now. I know that's hard as well, but just think about Luxon. I mean, how hard is it for him to decide to remove that solo mum? I mean, why do we ever think of him? That's my question, Chewy.
Yeah, he is bad at this.
Oh, we got to do that as a t-shirt as well. I'm writing that one down. You say that so much, and you're so right. He is bad at this.
Bad at this. Like out of those little snippets, right? The only one that got it right was Nicola Willis. Just straight out of the gates. I don't need it.
I don't want one, I think. She said, I don't want one.
I don't want one.
Yeah.
Perfect. Awesome. No wiggle room. Not up for debate.
Yeah.
I don't want it.
Yep.
And if they all said that, then that would be fine. Like it's under the rate of inflation. It's the Independent Remuneration Authority. Like they should be able to play this better.
Yeah.
And I think when Luxon sort of goes off and says, hey, look, it's that governments can't set their own wages, and you well know this. He's hidden behind that sort of stuff before. It's very close to the entitlement speech that he got absolutely fucking lashed on. So he needs to be better at this, and that can be a saying, hey, look, the Remuneration Authority exists. They need to be independent. It's very important that a government can't set its own wages and a Prime Minister can't set its own wages. That's a bedrock thing. However, I've spoken to my caucus and none of us want this.
I wonder if foresight.
That's a better
foresight is. I wonder if foresight's what's needed before. It sounds really, because like what would you remember? But it's almost like before the election, you need to get the media together and go, hey guys, just so you know, whether we win or they win, we're not going to challenge the remuneration authority. You know what I mean? Like pre-election go, we're going to let those things play out. We're not going to put a freeze on. In fact, we're going to lift the freeze. Whoever wins, Labor might win and it'll benefit them. You know, we're going to do it. Because the optics of it, and like I said, maybe I'm being unrealistic because you would need to have sort of optics on every single part of the economy, which is probably impossible. But I wonder if there is some things that all political parties could get ahead of before the election in case they win, to then not be in this position right now of you know, why are you guys getting a pay increase with the cost of living crisis. I mean, it's probably impossible. It's probably me just spitballing, but just a thought.
Yeah.
Just a thought.
Yeah, it's a tricky one, and look, something that gets overlooked, right, is it is a tough job. Like, there's a lot that goes into it. There's some very long hours. There's a lot of responsibility, and in almost every case, these people would be earning more in the private sector.
Yeah.
You know, realistically, Luxon doesn't need any money. He's got money. You know,
seven houses, no mortgages. Remember that as well.
But if you pay people too little, you open them up to potential corruption and underhanding, and you know, all of that. So that's the counter argument. I'm not saying that that's the case necessarily here, but that's something that has to be considered. The timing on this is terrible. The optics on it is terrible. You're damned if you do. You're damned if you don't. What the main criticism here is that Luxon's terrible at fielding these questions.
Yeah.
Like his obvious pissiness with having to answer it.
Being questioned.
Dude, that's the job.
Yep.
You're going to have to answer questions that piss you off.
Yeah.
You're going to have to field them from people that make your day more difficult. It's the job.
Yeah. Yep.
That's why you get near $500,000. I could put up with a lot for $500,000. I put up with a lot now for a lot less than that.
I tell you what, I don't know. I don't know if you could pay me to do that job, Prime Minister. Because I agree it's a hard job. I agree, especially the hours and stuff. I just don't know if you could. Hey, thanks to Nick, who has given us a super sticker. The package that we're using, Chewy, it doesn't pop up on the package that we're using. So whatever that looks like, and I hope it was great. Whatever that looks like on YouTube, we hope you enjoyed it. We are time to wrap, or we are time to do one more quick story. The article is only 2 minutes. It's titled "Falling Vaccination Rate Prompts Warning New Zealand at Risk of Measles Epidemic." We'll check it out.
Measles great again.
Yes, New Zealand 2026, making measles great again.
New Zealand is at serious risk of a measles epidemic due to growing numbers of unimmunised children.
Childhood measles vaccination rates are at about 82%, well below the 95% needed for population-wide immunity. Alexa Cook reports.
Kokiri Marai's clinical nurse is worried about her community, as just 69% of Māori under 2 are vaccinated against measles.
They're really far too low, absolutely. For the community in general, and particularly for Māori Pacific Islanders.
A concern shared by Dr Oz Mansour from the Public Health Communications Centre.
If we don't get enough people vaccinated, there will be an outbreak of measles.
The latest briefing he co-authored shows the number of children becoming susceptible to measles is growing by about 1,000 a month. It calls for 3 urgent actions: for the immunity gap to be closed, a reduction in the risk of importing measles by requiring proof of vaccination to leave or enter the country, and a rethink of the public health response, focusing on identifying and isolating contacts.
The challenge is for for most people is we haven't seen measles epidemics. We don't know, the extent of misery and severe illness it can cause, and including death.
World Health Organization figures show measles cases almost doubled in 2023 compared with the previous year, reaching 320,000.
But we're concerned with the global rise of measles cases, there'll be more, and we don't now, progressively, each year as time passes, we have less and less of that high school protection.
That's because New Zealand's vaccination rates have been falling since 2017, which means reduced herd immunity. But boosting those rates is proving difficult.
There are a few reasons. One of them would be a flow-on effect really from COVID. I think that there's a lot of mistrust out in community at the moment.
Another problem is the delays in getting nurses accredited for all of life vaccinations. Billy Jo and 4 of her nursing colleagues have been waiting since December for an assessment so they can vaccinate without supervision.
And that's really tough for us to sit on our hands and wait.
Especially as the risk is growing. Alexa Cook.
So, yeah, a quick one, really, to wrap up the show tonight. But it did say they were dropping since 2017. They never stated this, but I had a look at the numbers the other day, and it looks like there's also a significant downturn since 2020. And, I mean, the nurse was suggesting it, but I think it's pretty safe bet to go anti-vaxxers, COVID. Because so many of those people who are like, oh, I'm not anti-vaccine, I'm just anti this vaccine, I'm measles, mumps, rubella. Now it's time for those people to put their money where their mouths are. And the people who have built up a following based around no vaccine now have to get out there and go, now remember I said I'm not anti-vaccine, to get their communities vaccinated for this. This is their time to stand up and go, this one that's been around for whatever it's like 30, 40, 50, 60 years, get it done. And I can still remember actually, it might have been 10 years ago, might have been 15 years ago, that there was a whole bunch of people in the Waikato who were all very much like a anti-vax, anti-this, anti-that, wouldn't do it. Often from the more kind of green part of society, and don't put harmful things in my body part of society. And then in Waikato there was an outbreak of measles, and all of a sudden all of these people got their kids vaccinated just like that. So we have sort of first world privilege around this as well. I mean, you don't find people who are living in places, third world countries, who have various outbreaks that you can have vaccines for, particularly pushing back on vaccines. But because we can separate ourselves and sleep in our own bedrooms and, be away from other people and that, we have this privilege purely through nothing we've done. No one chose to be in New Zealand if you were born here, or if your parents brought you here. Then you've struck the lottery of life not to be sitting in a refugee camp in some part of the Congo begging for vaccines. You are just here being influenced by 12 New Zealanders telling you government's trying to make you magnetic and inject you with a chip given to them by Bill Gates.
Now remember, and Nick's pointed it out in the chat here, that there was a push against vaccines.
Yeah.
Again, based on absolute discredited falsehoods.
Yeah, right.
That vaccines caused autism. So that was picking up pace years before COVID was an issue.
But COVID has added rocket
and
fuel to that
supercharged
conversation.
it.
Yeah, supercharged.
Yeah, absolutely supercharged it. Look, I think if it's 62% in Māori and Pacific community, we saw the solution to that during COVID. There's a distrust of the health system as it stands. You get people in those communities to go out and do it. You support them to do it. You fund them to do it. You let them go door to door and get it done. That's what we did during COVID. That's the model that we should be using now. And gee, wouldn't it be good to have a Māori health authority to do that?
Sounds like we need to get Harry Tam back on the show, mate.
Yeah. Absolutely. It's like if people are waiting for accreditation and there's not enough slots for them to do it, it's something that funding can fix. But we're cutting funding in our health departments.
Yep.
It's stuff like this that sounds like we are supercharging a potential epidemic.
Yep.
And measles will end up with blind kids and dead kids.
Yep.
Just fuck's sake.
Yeah.
Can we make a right choice here somewhere?
I think I said worming last night. I'm going to go with wooming. I think wooming is better. W-U-ming, wooming. Andrew Wakefield has a shit ton to answer for. I believe Andrew Wakefield, I've got his Wikipedia page, is the guy who did that.
Yeah, he's the autism guy. He's the autism guy.
There's been so much research.
Nonsense.
There's been so much research as to why people make the link, and apart from his discredited lies in his research, my understanding is often when kids get vaccines on their cycle is about the same times in their life where autism starts to show itself. Yeah. And so people have put what's the saying? Causation and correlation.
Yeah, correlation is not causation.
Yeah. And so because it's like, it was like if you started to speak at 1 year old, right? And that's when you got your vaccine. Oh, did you know that getting this vaccine, it makes children speak? It's the same sort of thing, just when they happen to start showing for autism. So that's what they hang on to. And yeah, it's really interesting. I was reading something the other day talking about, no, I wasn't. I was listening to something. I struggle with that because I can't ever tell what I'm doing because I'm dyslexic. But people were talking about a court case coming out against right-wingers in America, including Tim Pool, Stephen Crowder, Fox News, Newsmax, who have shown the image of a young man and claimed he was a white supremacist who had committed a mass shooting. And he wasn't. And the thing is, they never retracted it. And the point that this lawyer was making was, once it's out there, even if they did retract it, you can never walk it back completely. So what I'm trying to say is, once this idea is out there about the autism and vaccines, even though that's been discredited, and I think he's even said he lied. I think, I could be wrong with that. That still, you can't walk it all the way back, because some people will always choose to want to follow the narrative because they have that confirmation bias. They say, well, that they want it to be true because that's their excuse for why they've got an autistic child, or that's their excuse for why they're not going to vaccinate their children. And yeah, you can never put the toothpaste back in the toothpaste holder. Is that what they're called? Entirely.
Yeah. Yeah. Hey, but before we toddle off,
I left about 4 minutes ago, just so you know.
I want to come back to what we talked about yesterday, that fantastic interview with the ACT spokesperson for arts and culture and musicals. The interviewer, someone pointed out something.
Steve
remember that our ACT fella said he doesn't really read a lot of fiction, but he does read political non-fiction.
Yes. He said non-fiction, and a lot of the non-fiction is political. Yeah.
Yeah. So our interviewer that we absolutely love actually wrote a political non-fiction book, which sounds amazing.
Oh, yeah.
I'm going to try and hunt it out. I'll read the little blurb here.
Yep.
The funniest book about New Zealand politics ever. Dirty, shocking, weird, sick, toxic, unbelievable, profound, stupid, harrowing, insane in the brain. New Zealand's 2014 election campaign had it all. It got stranger with every day. And Steve Bronius made it his mission to record the entire black farce in a series of breathless and bizarre campaign diaries. He visited Kim.com's creepy mansion. He stole a dinghy to track down the lost tribe of the ACT Party. He fell on hard times and asked whale oil for a job. He invited Nikki Hager to Hamilton and left him there. And then he hung out with John Key in the backseat of the Prime Minister's campaign bus as hard drugs were passed around.
Oh.
So that sounds brilliant.
Sounds like we've got a book club to come up to.
Yep. So yes, I'm going to judge him on the quality of his interview, and that book sounds amazing. So there we go. That guy couldn't have fumbled that interview harder if he went out trying to do that.
I saw someone today, I can't remember who it was, say something like, or tweet something like, and you thought Prince Andrew's interview was bad. Like, that's the level they put it at, which I thought brilliant. Absolutely perfect. Hey, puppy dog.
Yeah.
How you doing, mate? Hey, girl. You having fun upstairs? Good girl. Off you go. Go on your mat. All right. I think we might head off for the night. Thanks, team. I'm going to watch Te Ao with Moana tomorrow. I'm going to check out the working group tomorrow. We might have some stuff from there. But I suspect, I don't know this for sure, but I suspect TVNZ has learnt off NewsHub, because NewsHub used to do this thing where they'd do the research and the polling, and then they'd release it over the next 4 or 5 nights. So there might be some more polling coming out tomorrow night. And like I said, I want to be really clear. We couldn't be any clearer that I don't give a shit about the 48 seats in the House and these results. But what is interesting is the vibe of the nation to get the results that they've got. What is interesting is a government that is the worst performing first term government as of today, that was as of any government under the MMP era. That's interesting. And that's what we'll continue to kind of talk about if there's more to talk about it. All right, team. Hey, thanks for jumping on, Chewy. Hope it wasn't too long a day for you. You can go sleep.
I'm going to face plant straight into bed after this.
And for everybody else, go and have a coffee and stay up till 2 in the morning and do something fun. But come back tomorrow night at 9 p.m. Bring a friend. We'll see you then. Thanks for joining us tonight, team. Hooroo.
Cheers, fam.